Right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Track Changes launch report webinar. Really delighted to have you all here today for this really exciting and groundbreaking report. My name is Quinn Runkle. I'm the Director of Education at SOS UK. SOS UK is Students Organising for Sustainability. We're an education charity focused on sustainability and believe that sustainability ought to be woven through all aspects of education as a golden thread through all phases and subjects of education, right from early years through to lifelong learning. So this report is a really exciting piece of work that's come out of the Teach the Future campaign. So we'll be hearing a little bit more from Maya, one of the amazing student staff members in Teach the Future, in just a moment. But Teach the Future is a student-led sustainability education campaign calling for sustainability, the climate crisis and the ecological emergency to be meaningfully integrated through all aspects of student learning. And at SOS UK, we support the Teach Future campaign. So we'll be hearing from a couple of different folks in the call today. Maya, as I said, from the Teach Future team, Bill Scott from the Teach Future Adult Advisory Board, and some of the incredible academics who actually built and designed this report and have been working hard all summer to pull this together with teachers and educators from right across the country. So that is what I wanted to cover by way of an introduction to SOS UK, Teach Future, and the report itself. Just in terms of a bit of housekeeping, in the Zoom webinar function, we have a lovely Q&A tool. So if you hover over your screen and click on the Q&A function, you'll then be able to record questions as we go along. We've got a nice chunk of time at the end of the webinar today to answer some of those questions. So if you have anything that springs to mind, please do record those in the Q&A as we go, and then we'll be able to revisit those at the end. We also have Mel on the line from our SOS UK team. So if you're having any tech issues or anything, please feel free to pop those in the chat box. She'll be able to help you to sort those out. Okay. Without further ado then, I'm really delighted to introduce Maya Hoare from the Teach Future team. Maya is a climate activist, university student, and one of our volunteer coordinators. She's our volunteer coordinator for Teach the Future in England. And she's going to be providing a little bit of an introduction today from her perspective on behalf of the Teach Future students. So Maya, over to you. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Quinn, and hello, everyone. As Quinn said, my name is Maya, and I have the pleasure of working alongside fellow students at Teach the Future. And I'm just going to briefly introduce the student perspective to this report. Teach the Future England has commissioned this Track Changes review of the curriculum, led by eminent academics, to help realise our vision for education. At Teach the Future, we believe that students need to be taught about the climate emergency and the ecological crisis, so how they are caused, what we can do to mitigate them, and what our future lives and jobs are going to look like due to them. We believe that the majority of teaching and learning in the entirety of our education system is misaligned with the systemic changes urgently required to make our society sustainable. Therefore, sustainability and the climate crisis need to become key content in all subject areas, and educators need to be trained in how to teach about these difficult topics in a way that empowers students, and they need the funding and resources to do this. So this project is a comprehensive guide working alongside our climate education bill for England and Wales to show leaders exactly how and why climate education should be integrated into the curriculum. This project clearly demonstrates that climate education shouldn't be siloed or restricted to certain subjects like science and geography. Instead, it should permeate the entire curriculum in order to equip students with the necessary tools to understand and deal with the climate crisis. This project shows that the curriculum does not necessarily require a huge amount of additional content. Our vision for climate education can be realized through repurposing current content, making considered efforts, and shifting focus and framing. And we know that teachers and students alike support our vision for climate education. According to the recent Pearson report, 47% of head teachers want climate change incorporated into the national curriculum with as much time and emphasis as core subjects. And 61% of teachers say the current education system is not developing tolerant, sustainably minded global citizens of the future. As young people, we feel that our education system routinely fails to educate, prepare, and equip us and our fellow students for the climate emergency, leaving us ill-equipped to navigate these problems in our everyday lives. So I grew up attending comprehensive schools in Coventry, and my exposure to climate education was limited. Yes, we learned about carbon emissions, recycling, natural disasters, and of course, how to turn the light off when leaving a classroom. But I believe that what is central to the curriculum for a changed climate, yet what was missing in my education, is a sense of empowerment. Of course, we need to learn the facts about climate change, but we also need to learn how to engage with the climate crisis so that instead of leaving us with a sense of hopelessness, we feel empowered to participate in tackling the climate crisis. Similarly, one of our volunteers, Catherine, talked about how being given a space to share concerns and communicate openly can foster a sense of community. She said, breaking these barriers and supporting each other from a young age would have been extremely beneficial for myself as I now navigate growing up in a world where such honest conversations and awareness can be rare in the everyday. And I know we're not the only ones to feel this way. According to the Schools and Sustainability Survey in 2018, 42% of young people aged 9 to 18 say they have learned little, hardly anything, or nothing about the environment, and 68% are interested in learning more about the environment. Without sufficient climate education, the onus is on us to educate ourselves, which at worst can lead to misinformation and eco-anxiety. If the curriculum for a changed climate is implemented, young people will be able to discuss and learn about our environment and sustainability in a safe and controlled environment, leaving them prepared for our ever-changing world. Thank you for listening to me.
Well, thank you so much, Maya. I think that introduction just perfectly captures the importance of this report, of this work, and also the amazing work that you and your colleagues do in Teach the Future. So thank you so much for setting off the discussion this morning in that way. Well, thank you very much, Maya. Next, we're over to Bill Scott, who will be providing a little bit of an introduction to the context of the report. Bill is an emeritus professor at the University of Bath. He's the chair of the National Association for Environmental Education and the founding editor of the Journal for Environmental Education Research, and a key member of the Teach the Future Adult Advisory Board. Bill, over to you.
Thank you, Quinn, and good morning, everybody. It's really good to be with you. I've been asked to say a few words about why we set this project up, the why being the Teach the Future's Adult Advisory Board. But first, I feel I ought to say a huge thank you to everybody who's been involved. Elsa Lee and Paul, pardon me, Elsa Lee and Paul there, obviously, because they're the coordinators of what went on, but everybody else as well. Over 40 people. Thank you very much for doing such a splendid job in a short time, and not at an easy time in the year either. The National Association for Environmental Education was very pleased to support this work, and we're also pleased with the outcomes. So why did Teach the Future do this? Well, if you've ever written to the DFE and complained that there wasn't enough about climate change or the ecological crisis in the national curriculum, then, as of course many young people have, then you will have very good insights into why we did this. when you do write to the DFE like that, as lots of young people have, and I've done that once or twice myself, you get a very polite letter back, usually from the Minister of State with responsibility for school standards. This inevitably points out that the national curriculum does cover climate change and the ecological crisis, and therefore your request is simply misguided. And the letter usually goes on to give examples of how the national curriculum covers the issues that we're interested in. And all such responses have the considerable merit of being truthful as far as they go. But this is the point, of course. Although there is national curriculum coverage, it just doesn't go far enough. It doesn't go far enough to meet in either depth or breadth, or in age-appropriate content, or in providing opportunities to explore the issues, the sort of things that Maya so eloquently pointed out a few minutes ago. It's essentially a backward glance to a different time, and it simply looks out of date. And as Maya said, most of the DFE responses you get simply focus on science and on geography, and they don't offer or mention the possibility that other subjects might have something important to contribute. They also deny that students might learn something if there were links between the subjects they're taught rather than simply siloed responses, mostly through geography and science. In effect, the DFE says that although climate and environmental issues are multidimensional in real life, in school they can't be. Well, as we've just heard, young people say they want to be educated in order to be involved in creating solutions to these, what are huge issues of our time, the biggest issues of our time. And DFE says, well, of course you can do this, but only after you've been educated and only after you've left school. This is a really odd message to send about the role of schools in the 21st century. And it sits awkwardly with what's happening in further and higher education and with how employers have changed their thinking. Not only does it deny young people the experiences they're calling for, but it also sends a message to school leaders and governors and teachers. It says, going beyond what the national curriculum says isn't really important. You can do it if you want to, but you don't really need to. And this just serves to put schools off and undermines what committed teachers are already doing. And this is clearly a problem, as Teach the Future's research shows. I think last year it showed that 75% of teachers feel they haven't received adequate preparation to teach students about these issues. Well, over the last few years, DFE has turned down numerous opportunities to change what the national curriculum says. So Teach the Future and its adult advisory board thought that it would be good, be helpful to explore these issues for itself and just to see what such change might look like. That's to say, we decided to ask some experts to do it. And this is what's happened, and it's what Elsa, Paul and Alex will now be talking about. Whether DFE takes any notice of these outcomes is rather a moot point. But in one sense, it's not important, because what this report does is useful in its own right, but it also lays down a marker for others to build on. I can only hope that they do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bill, for that context setting, and also for all of the amazing work that the Adult Advisory Board does to support Teach Future and to guide the students' work in this space. I think that really helpfully sets the scene for what Alex, Elsa, and Paul are now going to introduce to all of us. So let me introduce these three key folks who have worked tirelessly over the summer to coordinate this project ready for launch today. So first off, Alex Catallo. Alex is a learning designer at Curriculum for Life and Sustainability Education. Elsa Lee. Elsa is an educationalist with an interdisciplinary approach centered on environmental sustainability education and place-based learning. And Paul Vare. Paul is a researcher from the University of Gloucestershire, specializing in teacher education and learning for sustainability. Alex, Elsa, and Paul, thank you so much for everything that you've done this summer, and over to the three of you now to introduce the report to us.
Thank you very much, Quinn, and thank you very much, Maya and Bill, for those words. We've decided to chop this up among the three of us. There will be a deft and seamless pass between the three of us, what we're doing. I'll just introduce, firstly, just a few key points I wanted to say about the process and what we discovered as we were doing it. The main thing we wanted to say, first of all, was we did not want to, we didn't set out to do a radical redraft of the whole curriculum. That would have been a different job. And as both speakers before have said, this is a kind of a thing you can just pick up and start using today if you wanted to. We certainly didn't want to add more content. We know we do hear regularly from, whether it's from practitioners or from civil servants at DFE, please, you can't put any more in the curriculum. What else do you take out? And so we thought, right, we can't be adding shed loads of material. What we have done then is, the specialists and the various people, I'll talk about who's in all these teams in a minute, type of people, is to just add a bit of a course correction to the curriculum. It looks pretty similar, and Alex gets to show you the actual document, an example of it. It's in sort of same typeface. We've changed the color of the blue. It's a bit more turquoise now. There are words which will crop up in purple. That disguises an awful lot of work. But the thing also is, it's a very open curriculum as it is. It has been stripped out in the past. It's been revised and made lighter. And so lots of the people we spoke to said they didn't want to lose that flexibility. In fact, you could teach a lot of work. You could do a lot on sustainability, on climate change, the ecological crisis, if you wanted to, in the curriculum as it stands, but there's nothing to tell you you can. And there's nothing to suggest where you might do that, apart from a bit of, if you do some science and you do choose geography, you might get to do some, but otherwise you can miss the whole thing. So now the curriculum is shot through with those things, with suggestions, using the square brackets convention that the curriculum does, that says, you don't have to do this, but look, here's some really good ideas. But in places we have certainly changed the curriculum. And that's the idea, is without course correction, that over time that would actually lead to a very significant impact to anybody who's involved in going to school, because all these changes are there in all the subjects we've looked at. In that way, it gives permission to teachers to do these things. We don't know about, I'll talk a little bit more about the process, but Elsa, do you want to come in and say a bit about who was involved?
So yes, and I think I just would like to reiterate that we do really applaud that open and contextually relevant and sensitive nature of the curriculum, and we really acknowledge the amount of work that goes into developing a curriculum and this document as it is. So what we've done is much more limited than that kind of work in terms of the groups of people that have been involved in the specific subjects. But what we want to, and I think just what Paul has said there, is just that we want to kind of emphasize, that while each of those specific subjects, there's lots of work that goes into them individually, what we've been able to do is look at this as a whole. And in a sense, that means we've had a similar experience to what a child has, because although, the individuals working on subjects have a siloed experience, the child moves between all of those subjects and then leaves with a kind of whole holistic experience of that curriculum. And so what the changes, while they look quite minor, that we've suggested are going to have an impact, because the child will experience them across the entire curriculum. So it's not that we're suggesting that, since sustainability appears in every single part of the curriculum, across the full range of all of the different parts of the curriculum, but it appears in each of the subjects. And so from that point of view, this is quite a change. I think that's enough from me, Paul, and then you can go to the process.
Sure. I'll just talk you through how we did this, because it's as Elsa says, it's a microcosm of what the real process is, with all those subject specialists and communities and the subject associations involved. We obviously in a few weeks we couldn't do all that, and so what we're going to do is I'll show you what we did do. So here's our slide. Just to let you know, we are talking about the context. We've just been doing that. The next bit is how we go about it. If I start as a show. Now, are you seeing my notes or are you seeing the actual slide?
Yeah, we're seeing your notes there, Paul.
How do I swap that around then? Stop sharing and start again. I guess that's the answer to that. So if I put this over here and then put that on there, escape from that. Let's try this again. Screen share. Do that. Do you now you have the slide? Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
There you go. Look at that. So, as I said, just going back, there's an overview. We're talking about the context, how we went about it, the guiding principles. We think quite significant outcome of this. Elsa will talk more about that, and then Alex will talk through the example and what it does actually look like. So that's kind of how we're going to cover this next bit of the launch. Right. So here we are with the process. As you can see, there's a timeline across the top. Down there is the coordination unit. That's Elsa and Alex and myself. We got together, having secured this work, discussed the process we were going to do and who was going to do what, and started recruiting. The first people we had to recruit was a reference group, people who we kind of were aware of through our various networks who specialize in learning for sustainability, people who've made a noise about this, who've done research about this, who've got something to say that we think is worth listening to. What would they want to do with this? So we've got our idea, but what's everybody else's ideas? And from that, we started discussing the curriculum as a whole, the approach to take, the aims of the national curriculum. And we actually did redraft the national curriculum aims just a bit. Again, we didn't just throw it away. And we started that process of saying, let's make this something you would recognize. We also took the time to talk to people from other jurisdictions. So we had a jurisdiction review team from the other UK jurisdictions, from Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, but also a colleague from Bangladesh. We were encouraged to go and look at the Norwegian example. So there are other examples of what different ways this is being approached. What really came out from the review team, we got a little report comes out of that, and that sort of feeds into our final report. Very interesting to see how they have radically altered their curricula. They've gone for areas of interest, areas of study, rather than the specific subjects that we've got in our national curriculum. And as I said before, we weren't going to go for the wholesale restructuring. Given all that lovely architecture and all those great ideas in the curriculum, what we learned from the jurisdiction team was that's not enough. If the researchers, and many of them were researchers, could tell us that actually if you go down into a school, what you find is some fantastic practice, some great case studies, but also plenty of places where there's not much happening because people have not yet had the professional development to support that new curriculum. And I say new, it's been going around for about 10 years. So in cases, so the real message we got from here is the curriculum is just the text. If you're going to do anything with a curriculum, you really do need to spend quite a bit of time on teacher professional development, both initial teacher education and the continuing professional development. And what we see at the moment, looking around our English example, is it's silent on this area. There's a lovely new strategy or a policy paper on climate change education, but actually nothing to support that in terms of teacher development. We're told there is a early career framework. Well, that says nothing at all about the climate or ecological crisis. So that's an interesting thing there, that what we're doing is a pretty good start, they said, but there's a lot more to this, to the ecology of education. The reference group met again in July, By this time, we're starting through those networks to recruit our other people I'd go on to. But they helped us come up with some guiding principles. And Elsa's going to talk us through those in a bit, but they're very important for guiding the work then that followed. And then we started recruiting our subject specialist teams. Now, these are people who are, again, people who write about, or academics thinking about a particular subject, but also a teacher who teaches that subject now, today in the classroom, handles the national curriculum materials, and if ideally a teacher educator. So that's 3 people we needed in the team, plus a coordinator from one of us 3, usually 2 or 3 of us in there as well. So the teams were various sizes. We'd meet, all of this would be met on Zoom or Teams, whatever platform we could get to work. And then we would discuss this. We'd start looking at a online version. We'd start commenting on that. We'd start typing in alterations, adding a bit here, taking a bit there, making lots of comments down the side. And then we would start to maybe go asynchronously, start working offline, because not everybody could meet at the same time. But it was important to have a discussion. And so more teams met with science, geography, history in the first tranche, with art and design, and then design and technology. Out of those came the curriculum documents that we're going to talk about. And as Elsa was saying, this started to give us this really great overview of what was to be done. We did meet a dilemma here in terms of how much to show, because, as I've said, that's quite a complex process. There's an awful lot of note taking, and if you started, we thought, well, let's just present that. This is the data, if you like, the raw data, and you realised quite quickly that was going to be unreadable. And if you presented that as a document to people to use, they would say, I don't know what to make with this. The national curriculum actually is a very clean document, and so we thought, no, let's go clean. Let's keep it as clear as possible. So we simply reduce it to the few words that have changed. So behind what looks like a fairly simple, perhaps unspectacular change is an awful lot of work by a lot of people. We then, time was cracking on, the summer is passing, and a lot of people have been away on holidays, so you can imagine that our timetable was slipping. We still had to get out an executive summary, and at that point we had more specialist teams still meeting. We wanted people to review our documents, so the reference group met again. Well, we're invited to look at our work, as was a separate review group of people with expertise who weren't in the reference group, but we felt we really wanted to have their view on it because of the work they've done on this in this area. So there's an awful lot of individuals getting involved now, and the reference groups keep meeting, but we're writing the final report. That's now prepared and out and ready to go. But even as we are presenting and launching this, do be aware that 1 or 2 teams are still meeting and still trying to catch up because they simply couldn't get it together over the summer. And why should they? And so there's a few curriculum documents still to come. But that's the process. I will, I think I should leave it there so that, Elsa, you can tell us a bit more about those guiding principles.
Could you go back 1 slide? Sorry, Paul.
Sure.
So thank you so much for that. I think that's really helpful so that you can understand that whilst what we're presenting looks like a finished product, it really is something that is a conversation starter, and we hope that it's going to inspire you to think about how this would look in your own terms and your own practice. If you're a teacher or as a decision maker, how you would bring your own kind of specific expertise to what we're offering. So we're not trying to offer a finished product. It looks good, but really it's a conversation starter. And we also want to just, because this has kind of been quite a messy process, despite it being well planned and rigorous at the same time. There will always be points for change and points for discussion. So I just want to emphasize that. And then. So what I want to talk about now are those principles, which we are really proud of. We think these came together from a group of about 20 of us, ranging from people who've been working in the field for up to 40 years to people who've been in the field, who are new to the field, very excited and motivated with fresh eyes and new perspectives to bring. And so we really are pleased with what we've produced here, and we think they stand alone as something which could be used, separately, either by teachers who are working in the classroom to think about how they deliver that open and flexible curriculum, but also by decision makers who might be thinking about making changes in the future, similar to what we're suggesting, or in whatever way they feel it works best. So I'm just going to, there are 10 of them. I don't know how we arrived at that lovely round number. We weren't intending to get a beautiful round number, but we did. And we've grouped them in 3 parts. So we've got part 1, which is the guiding principles around linking thinking, and that's a reference to Stephen Sterling's work, who you may have encountered before. And then guiding principles 2, which we'll go to those in a second. So anyway, the first 4 principles really talk about connections and interdependence and relatedness between different subjects, but also in a kind of practical way, but also in between humans and non-humans, and the kind of ecological nature of the world that we live in and in terms of system thinking. So principle 1 really does come through in science, as you might expect. It also comes through in geography, as you might expect, but it's also really possible to think about systems thinking in places like history, for example, in terms of thinking across time. So linking thinking isn't just a kind of geographical or a presentist approach. It's also about thinking across time. Can you go to you could just do all 4 principles for now, please, Paul? Thanks. So we have the other 3 thinking principles on there. One of those, which is about environmental justice and social justice, and just making the connections between those. One of them about sustainability being value laden and ethical and moral, as well as being about the facts of science, and geography, I guess. And then one of them about interdisciplinarity and transdisciplinarity, which we have already mentioned. In fact, the documents are really what we learned from design and technology, which I know Alex will talk about a little bit later, about how to make links between the curriculum areas, and we've kind of built that across the different documents, and I'll know that Alex will address that, I think, when she's talking in a minute. Okay, can you go to the next one? Thanks. So the second group of principles, the second 3, were really focused on this idea of positive futures and empowerment, which is what Maya was bringing up at the start. She was really, trying to, I think, encourage us to really think about this curriculum being something which allows children to contribute in the future to solving these kind of problems. And I came across a term today about solutionary thinking. So solutionary thinking is a kind of nice way of expressing this, but really what we're focusing on here is the kind of fears and dangers of eco-anxiety, and how we can do this in a way which acknowledges that exists, and kind of takes a remedial approach to that in some ways, to encourage children to think positively and about solutions and how they can contribute, and also to accept that at times they won't be solutions, but we have to still adapt and become resilient. Okay, can you go to the other? Thank you very much. Okay, so we have terms there like sense of awe and wonder, which we think can come through in lots of different curriculum areas, but maybe particularly important in the arts, but also in engineering and so on. And then at the bottom, we're talking about capabilities and dispositions for action. And while, again, that's possible in all of the different areas, we really think that citizenship can do that very, very well. And then, yeah, I think that's probably enough for that particular set of principles. And then the last set is about transformative learning. And here we kind of acknowledge that, from my point of view, any learning in some ways will change you, right? But we are really thinking about a much more wholesale, in some ways, approach to learning, so that it really is transformative, not just of the individuals who are experiencing it, but of the places where it happens, so the schools, and also then the wider society later on. So we are, and in that sense, we're thinking about systemic, creative, and critical thinking as being really significant and important. And these come through in lots of different areas of the curriculum, and particularly, but then again, and there we also highlight, thinking back to the idea of eco-anxiety or the the factor of eco-anxiety. And then I think, yeah, we've talked about resilience and action competence, which I've mentioned previously. So these questions around transformative learning, you know, fit well with the principles in the second group as well. And the final one is about unforeseen learning, and then connecting with the community, right? So really thinking about the school as being embedded in its community and being, you know, locally connected, locally linked, but that those local links are then also important for the wider world. Okay, so I think I'm going to leave it there, because I think you'll have time to explore these individually and think about how you see them, you know, reflected in your own practice, but also in your own, in your kind of, as a teacher or as a decision maker. And I'm going to hand over to Alex, who has done so much work for us as coordinating this project, and she's going to share an example of one of the subject documents with you.
Yeah, thanks, Elsa. As Elsa's mentioned, the purpose here is to navigate around the main output of this project, the track changes document, and provide visual context to Paul's description of these. So I'm going to share my screen, and we can take a look through one subject and walk through what it looks like, why it looks like it does. So I'm hoping you can see my screen right there. And thumbs up from Paul. That's amazing. Thanks, Paul. And what you notice when you first sort of land on this screen is that there is the Teach the Future branding. And additionally, what you'll notice on the opening page is the headings. They are turquoise, I think we can call that. They have a sort of turquoise color to them. So the original black headings of the national curriculum are shown in a different color. So when you look at this, it has a familiar feel with a difference. It looks familiar, but you know you're not looking at the national curriculum. Additionally, you will notice that the typeface is also the same. And so that intention of familiarity is present all the way through. As we scroll down, we come to, first of all, I'll just move my screen down. I want to go slow. I will move this through more efficiently in a second. We've got the contents, but the first bit of content you come to is the curriculum brief. And the curriculum brief is just a few lines. It provides a flavour of the key changes that have been made in each of the subjects. And so you get this kind of holistic snapshot across subjects. And each curriculum brief for each subject has the subject it pertains to as the headline. So you'll find in design technology, which is where we currently are, design technology is the headline in the curriculum brief, but you then get this flavour of the changes that were made in the different subjects. So we're getting a sense of that transdisciplinary approach that we have adopted. And as we then move through the document, we start to, again, we can see it all looks very familiar, very comfortable. And we can start to notice that the changes that are present are shown in purple. And this is for usability purposes. So Paul mentioned that if you looked at our original track changes Word document, they were extremely difficult to read. You could get a sense of the sort of discourse, debate, comments, deletions, and made it very, very difficult to read. So we've got the changes that exist in these documents do so in purple, so you can identify clearly and easily where they are, making this document a usable, potentially a usable working document. You can also notice that the changes are pretty light. It does depend to an extent on the subject, but the changes are there as that course correction, small changes making potentially profound impact. In keeping with I think Paul mentioned this already as well, in keeping with the National Curriculum Convention of using square brackets for optional content, we've done the same. So if we've made any changes that fall within that optional that optional category, they are square bracketed. And again, we can see the changes as we move through. I'm going to skip to the end of this document because there's each document will follow this familiar format. We don't need to dwell on the actual content. That's obviously for you in your own time. But what we do come across, and this was inspired by DT, Design Technology, which is one of the reasons I'm here, is that during this project, we had the rare opportunity to view the national curriculum and listen to experts across these subjects, which gave us insight into how interconnected it is, and it is interconnected already. And this inspired us to really take a lead from DT, that if we scroll down to what DT does, it embeds those disciplinary links, knowledge and skills in the appendix already, and it does so for science and mathematics. And so with our holistic view that we've been fortunate enough to have, we started making similar links to the other changes that have been made across the documents. The intention here is really to stimulate dialogue and think of sort of potential future links that can be found through that dialogue across the curriculum. We can see as well, if we just jump over to geography, again, every subject has these cross-curricular links made. And it's just a sample, we haven't gone through and scoured it and made every single possible link. We've just put some examples in and across here. And if we come to the end of the document, we wrap up that document with the Teach the Future branding, recognizing that we're not in the national curriculum, but we're in a version of that familiarity, but something different is going on here. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I think it's back to you, Quinn.
Fab. Thank you so much, Alex. I'm so excited by seeing that example from Design and Technology that really illustrates the work that you and the broader team have done across that variety of different subject areas. We now have some time for a bit of a Q&A. And Mel, you've just popped that reminder in the chat as well. If folks have burning questions, and I can see them rolling in now, please do pop those into the Q&A. Just to say, whilst folks might be typing in any questions, we've already had a few come through around kind of sharing and dissemination of this. So I'll just say a brief word on that now. The report and some of the initial subject documents that are all good to go, as well as a blog of Maya's amazing opening statement, will all be live on our website later today. We'll send that out to all of the attendees from today as a follow-up, along with the recording of this session. So please do feel free to share that with colleagues who may have been unable to make it today. And that'll include the 10 principles that Elsa covered, which I know have landed really well with a lot of people on the call today. So let's go over to the Q&A. There's a question here, I think, from Anna that would be perhaps useful to start off with. Paul, I think you touched on this a little bit in your introduction, but just to revisit it. Anna says, this looks terrific and very inspiring. Do you think practitioners who are not in the subjects traditionally considered relevant to climate change, geography and the sciences, might feel they need additional training to feel confident delivering this material?
Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks for the question. And I guess that does invite me to reiterate the point we made in light of talking to those from other jurisdictions, that you're sure you can get this stuff in the text, but if you want people to really use it and exploit the possibilities there, they will need some training, some discussion. I mean, we know from research in Teach for Education, just one-off events don't do much. You need to have a continuous, at least a couple of over 2 terms worth of 2 or 3 visits, and you'll start to get the hang of what it is that we're trying to do here. So it need not be a huge expensive input. We do already have structures now in place that the DfE have put there in terms of the early career framework and these NPQs, these national professional qualifications. They're being delivered very efficiently. Some might think very efficiently through slides. But if that was to be entered into it was to be part of discussion, just to start to say, well, how do we do this? And then talk to your colleagues. you would start to develop ideas. It needn't be that you have to have an expert in your school. There's so much stuff that's out there, so much available, plenty of great, whether it's NAEE or ThoughtBox or Ministry of Eco-Ed, there's any number of people trying to give teachers material. What teachers need is a bit of time and space to talk among themselves about, well, how are we going to approach this? Are we doing the right thing here? Is this the right approach? And just to have their own brilliant ideas, because that's the most inspiring thing about being a teacher, is you can bring your own ideas into the classroom and your own inventions, but it does need a stimulus. So the answer is yes, but don't think massive rollout of expensive CPD, professional development for everybody in the first instance. It can be done in quite an efficient way.
Great, thank you, Paul. The next question that I think would be great to go to comes from Bill Finnegan. And he asks, are there cases where you deleted text from the national curriculum rather than only adding text? I'm wondering if there were phrases you felt would lead to teaching that perpetuated unsustainability or exacerbated the climate crisis.
That's a really good question, isn't it? And there were places where maybe not so much like big bodies of text were deleted, but small words were replaced by other words to just try and kind of go back to thinking about those principles and thinking about the holistic experience. You could argue what your point about actually does the curriculum have the opposite effect of what we're asking it to do. And as a child, if you had that whole experience the way it is now, you could take that perspective, because it's very likely that you could be in a school where teachers aren't capacitated to be able to deliver these things themselves, to adapt the curriculum to meet those kind of criteria. And so it could happen. But at the same time, if teachers are capacitated to understand and to feel comfortable with dealing with these very difficult questions in the classroom, then that's not necessary. The curriculum doesn't necessarily create that. It's really, in a sense, that the way that the curriculum is delivered and the kind of capacity and capabilities that teachers are able to draw on or have been provided with, that might lead to that. And then I think the holistic kind of approach that we've taken, not all of the subjects, by the way, you'll notice it's not all of the subjects, but we were only asked to do 8, I think, will have the effect of it appearing in all different places. And then that, as a kind of whole experience of the child moving between all of those different places, should support a change.
Great, thanks very much for that, Elsa. Another question comes from Deborah, kind of in terms of terminology. She asks, is the team aware of the discussion or debate around the term sustainability versus regeneration, sustainable, regenerative? Yeah, Elsa.
Paul as well, but you just take over if you feel. But yes, we are. We haven't used that language in this document. It's a good point to raise, in fact, Deborah. But we are very aware of that, and the kind of the questions around sustainability being more about maintaining what we have, whereas regeneration tries to make something new from where we're at. It is a good point. I don't think we've used the term regenerative in the document. Paul, do you have a comment?
No, just you're absolutely right. The whole thing we're aiming for is that the world is regenerative. That's why we're all here, and that's what we're aspiring to, and being a part of that rather than something that halts it. But I think that's a technical debate. That's a better word, but it's to use that now in this document would lead to I think a bit of confusion as to I thought this was about sustainability, and that's the word we're all using. I think if you start the discussions, if any subject starts talking about how do we do this and where's the material, one would hope that the term regenerative would come through very quickly. We certainly talk about ecological, and that's where that comes from. So I think you will quickly find your way into the change in the debate, which is why I think in the past we've always said, don't get hung up on the terminology of sustainability. Think about what it actually means for you and for the planet. And regenerative, I don't know if it's going to be superseded by something else. I think it's a pretty good term, actually. I'm landing on it, but something else will come along again. Keep changing, keep thinking about it. So sustainability is there, and the fact that it'll probably be open to contestation is very important. And I think
Critical
in
thinking.
English is, for example,
Yeah.
you know, that's a good place where it will come out, and maybe we just need to stick it in there before we finish that document.
Bob, thank you both. Then a question that goes back to sort of the process piece. Have subject associations and or learned societies been engaged with these outputs? Are the subject documents endorsed or supported by any of them?
Yep. Okay. Actually, virtually everybody in the team is a member of an association, and they really informed us about the big debates in their subject area, which was fascinating for us, and we learned a lot that way. But there's certainly no endorsement, and they were very careful to say not. In fact, some people said, better put don't put us in the acknowledgement. It could just, you know, puts a cat among the pigeons, because we're not, you know, the final arbiters of what you're writing here. So we've had to make it. And we've had some really good debates where somebody sent a load of comments. They're not now in the room. Somebody else is saying, what did you think? And we start to try to put the two points together to end up with a purple word. And so it wouldn't be fair to ask the subject association to say, yeah, you did this, and thanks for helping you. Now we're going to put your name on it. I don't think we'd have got very far. So the thing is, this is a whole lot of ideas. It's a discussion starter, as we've said before. And the branding is Teach the Future. They're the ones who inspired this. They're the ones who asked us to help create it, and it's their document. So I think that's fairly clear from the branding. I don't think anybody should worry that if they did get involved, that they've somehow let down their subjects if somebody else disagrees with it, because we changed it at the end to make sure the different points of view were brought in as much as possible.
We hope that subject associations might find it useful, right? That they might have a look at it and think about how it matches with their own kind of perspectives on those questions.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on at the moment. A lot of subjects are working on this already. You know, we're not the only ones. It's just it is a contribution to that much wider debate that's going on right now.
Well, thank you so much. We've got a question about the 10 principles, the 10 kind of guiding principles. So could you talk a little bit more about the 10 principles and the process that led to their creation? Curious about any references or citations that informed these, and if those might be included in the report.
Now, we haven't included references and citations. We're not doing this in that sort of academic manner, but you'll be able to see the footprint of lots of work in there. You know, Paul and I have talked about how, you know, if you look at different people who've done this kind of work, or different groups of people that have done this kind of work, they really do connect very well with those different groups of people. So really they're the outcome of, I think, around 20 different people's energy who came together to talk in those reference group meetings, and then Paul and myself and Alex took those discussions away, and we thought that the sort of best way to do this was to kind of abstract principles from them and use them. We do mention Stephen Sterling's work on linking thinking, but there's only actual reference that we've included because you know, that is a direct language use, really. I don't know, Paul, do you want to add?
No, that's right. It's not a piece of it's not an academic paper. We wanted the report to be very readable, so that you could make sense of it very quickly, whoever you were. There's as you say, once you get a bunch of academics in the room, there is so much reading in that discussion behind it, and no time to capture where it's all come from. So we just decided to let's just take the richness of the ideas, put them together. And if you know your literature, you'll probably spot a few ideas coming out. But no, that's not how it was put together. It was through conversations.
Great, thank you both. We've got a nice question from Kindy in terms of how we can support folks to share this out. So Kindy says, hi, I'm a counselor and cabinet member for education and skills. With the school's white paper referring to academies for the future, what pointers can you give me in my role as a cabinet member to support schools to proceed with more pace on the climate change and curriculum?
Cool. It's a big question, isn't it? I think you need a stimulus event where people actually get to grips with where we are in terms of the science of now. We are in a critical position, and I think that we do need to be reminded of that. Sometimes I feel like we're in one of those James Bond movies and there's a clock ticking down, and we're getting better at dealing with this. We've got great technology. Everybody in all sectors of society are working really hard, but things are unraveling with all the feedback mechanisms in the planet, and we're going to so we need a sense of urgency. So the first thing is, let's get a sense of urgency about this and take it seriously, not just think, oh, there's another hobby horse coming through, and yeah, she always bangs on about that, and yeah, it's his thing. It's not like that. It's not one of those. So once that's clear, I think they can get a sense of galvanizing the institution around taking this seriously. Then, as I've said before, there's any number of ways into this. I think teacher discussions, so sort of the Twilight CPD sessions that take place should be thinking about this. How do we do it? And then can we get just getting that creative thinking going. I think this curriculum would be a great start, the work we've done, because it's not Alex, Elsa and me, it's all those other people who've been involved who've said, these are the sort of things I could do now in my classroom. And so that would be a great thing to share. And because it's not the DFE's document, you can see, well, okay, that's a little change we can make, and it starts to lead to a much bigger change. And as we've said, if every class and every subject is just starting to add that in here, when the child leaves the end of the day, they really get this is a joined up world. There's an issue out there. We're balancing the urgency with the need to do something about that anxiety. And the anxiety is assuaged by knowing that so much work is being done by people all around the world, all around you, trying to work on this. We are in this together, to coin a phrase which is often misused. And so that, that we get the sense that it's a sense of purpose in education that I think is otherwise missing.
Right, and I think we're going to have to close Q&A there. Thank you all so much for your amazing contributions today, and as I said before, all of your hard work in publishing this report. Thank you to all of our attendees today for joining in this discussion, asking thought-provoking questions that have really helped us to advance this discussion as well. Let me just give a brief overview of kind of next steps and where we're going with this, which I hope will answer a few of the outstanding questions in the Q&A. So the timing of this report is not random. So we are publishing it at this point in the year because the Teach Future team now has a presence at party conferences. So in terms of dissemination and next steps, we have panel events taking place at Labour and Conservative Party conference with key MPs supporting those events. That we hope will gain further support from those parties. In terms of the replicability of this report, this piece of work obviously happened in key stages 3 and 4. We're really excited by this model and this approach to demonstrating what education can and could look like. So we're exploring replicating this in other jurisdictions at other levels of education. So I know we had some questions about that, and that's certainly something that we hope will be in the pipeline. In terms of the dissemination of this report, it'll be live on our website later today, as I said, alongside a blog post of Maya's opening words, all of the subject documents, with a few more just in the pipeline coming in the next couple of weeks. But we will send out the links to that to everyone who attended today. So that way you've got that, as well as a copy of the recording of this session in case you want to watch back on anything or share it with colleagues. That report also includes, as I said, a copy of the 10 principles, because I know lots of folks are keen to see that again. With that, let me just say an enormous thank you to Alex, Elsa, and Paul for all of your amazing work on this in recent months, as well extending that thank you to the vast number of teachers, educators, academics who have fed into this work. Also, a massive thank you to Maya and to Bill for launching this discussion today and setting the scene so perfectly. If anyone would like to have further discussions about this, or if we weren't able to get to some of your Q&As, please do feel free to reach out to the Teach the Future or SOS UK teams. Emails are both hello@teachfuture.uk or hello@sos-uk.org. We'd be really, really happy to work with folks to continue this discussion and to advance this work as we move forward. So thank you again so much, everyone, for being here today, and look forward to working with you in the future. Take care. Bye.